Haunted History with Anne Burns of Down Paranormal in association with HauntedSolutions.com.
You're listening to The Crypt, and I'd like to welcome Anne Burns to the show for this month's Haunted History. And to stay festive, this month's segment is all about the Victorian creepy Christmas Eve tradition. So you're very welcome to the show, Anne.
Hi Rita, thanks very much.
Well, today you're going to talk about the Victorian tradition of telling ghost stories on Christmas Eve. But first, could you tell us what other Christmas traditions originated with them?
Right, okay Rita, well the Victorians really created the Christmas that we know today. The telling of the ghost stories on Christmas Eve and also the Christmas tree, although it dates back many years before. It was actually, I think, Queen Victoria, when she married Albert. He obviously was from a German background, and the Christmas tree is one of their traditions. And she had the Christmas tree brought into the palace, and everybody saw pictures and things like that. So that then became very fashionable. And also the first Christmas card was made in 1843. And again, Christmas crackers in 1848, they became a Christmas tradition that we still have today. So there's quite a lot of prominent Christmas traditions that we use now that the Victorians really put on the map.
And so many people would assume a lot of these traditions are American, like with Halloween. They think a lot of the traditions come from America when it's all rooted in Celtic history,
Yes, that's right. Before the beginning of the 19th century, Christmas wasn't even really celebrated. It was just another day. So it has definitely evolved, but the Victorians were the ones that have set it as what it is today.
And then we're all familiar with Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, and one would think tales of ghost stories were for Halloween and not Christmas. But given this tradition the Victorians had on Christmas Eve, it makes Dickens' ghost story, it makes it make more sense.
Yes, it does. Dickens actually wrote an awful lot of ghost stories. He loved ghost stories. It was his favourite thing to write. And I actually had a book of his Christmas ghost stories that my mum bought me years and years ago in a wee bookshop. And I have hunted the house, I can't find it. But he wrote an awful lot of ghost stories, Christmas ghost stories. And it was really his favourite type of story. And it actually, his interest in the supernatural and all things sort of strange and creepy and all, that actually came from his nanny. His nanny was a lady called Mary Weller, and he was only 5 or 6 years old at the time, and she used to terrorise him with these stories, from the old Penny Dreadfuls, these real gory tales of murder and creepy, strange, horrible things. And that's where, his love of this type of thing actually came from. And in fact, he said about Mary, he said that her name meant mercy, but he said she showed me none. So she must have had the poor guy terrorised out of his mind.
And what was it? Would they sit around, the Victorians, would they sit around the fire on Christmas Eve telling these stories?
Yeah. Yes, on Christmas Eve, the tradition was that they would sit around the fireplace. Obviously, there was no televisions and things like that, so this was a big part of the Christmas Eve entertainment. And it would mostly be stories that they would say that it was them, it had happened to them. They would tell it from their perspective.
Yeah.
And a lot of the very famous, like The Woman in Black, that the original story.
Yeah.
It's a man telling his friends on Christmas Eve the story about the woman in black. Another very famous one that's associated with Christmas is The Turn of the Screw, which another fantastic story. And all of these stories would have come about simply from this tradition, and just basically the love of being scared and excitement of it. Even today, is the BBC normally do like a Christmas ghost story. I don't know what it is this year, but they will have something on. It'll be like a two-part thing or something like that. But I suppose in a way that's that tradition carrying on today.
What did the Victorians find so creepy about Christmas?
I suppose if you imagine, the winter nights, it's dark at 4:15, 4:30. It was a time, it was very cold and windy and things like that. So you can imagine in the old houses, no heat, and them all gathered around the fireplace and listening to the wind blowing. It would have been chilling,
But that's
and also I think that it stems back to the pagan times as well. I think that's another carry-on from then, where the winter solstice, again, it's has always been known as a time where the so-called veil between the spirit world and the real world becomes very thin. People will associate that with Halloween, but actually winter solstice is supposed to be the most haunted day of the year, and a lot of the pagan beliefs and things like that, it was to do with rebirth and things starting up again and hoping that they're basically going to survive over the winter. And so I think all that sort of anxiousness has sort of followed down, and it has definitely stemmed from that as well.
And what would have been some of the traditions for the pagan festival celebrated at Christmas time?
The main one would be, the Yule, where you get the Yule log from. It's normally, depending on what way the calendar falls, but it's usually the 20th to the 23rd of December. It's one of the Celtic or pagan fire festivals, and it marks the return of the light after the longest night of the year. They used to think that the sun, or that it didn't move. Everything's so dark, and again, if you can imagine, and if they'd had a bad harvest or things like that, maybe didn't have much to get them by the winter, so they had the Yule log and all these different things like the wassail, with the cider, where they would light bonfires and they would, douse the trees with this spiced cider, and it's basically them, hoping and praying to the gods that, after this day, the light's going to come back and we're going to get through, obviously what would have been very bleak winters, and so that's really where the Yule tradition comes from, and it's actually a very interesting tradition. With the Yule log, you could never have bought a Yule log. It had to be given to you as a gift, or it had to be harvested. It was put in the hearth, and it was dressed with lots of greenery, because evergreen plants and trees were very special to the pagan people and people from that time, because it signified life continuing through the dark winter, because it was evergreen. So it's all very symbolic, and the log would have been dressed with greenery, and they would have put flour on it and things like this, and then it was actually lit with the embers from the Yule log of the year before, because the Yule log isn't burnt into dust. They have to keep part of it, and then because it's a cycle, then the remains of the one before is used to light the new Yule log, and it will burn for the 12 days. It will smoulder, and then it's put out, and that's a ceremony. But some of the embers will be kept then and used for next year. So it's very, very interesting.
Then, do you have any examples of some of the ghost stories the Victorians would tell on Christmas Eve?
Yes, Rita, actually, I do have some stories here, and these are actually ghost stories, hauntings, anniversary hauntings that occur on Christmas Eve, and apparently are still occurring every Christmas Eve. And so I'll just give you a wee idea. But this would be very similar. They're very short of the stories, but similar to what they would have talked about. The first one, as I said, occurs on every Christmas Eve, and its location is a place called Kempston in Bedfordshire, And it originally, the occurrence happened in Kempston Manor, which is actually now, it's an office space. The office space was once Kempston Manor, which was a family home. And the legend has it that the child, one of the children from the manor house, ran out of the home to meet his mother and father, who were returning for Christmas in a horse-drawn carriage. And the child was hit by the horse and died of his injury. And this ghost of this little boy and the noise of what happened, of the collision, is still heard in this office block that it is today. Another one is, again, it's another Christmas Eve one, and this one actually comes from Cumbria. It's about an old man. He vanished without trace, returning home from the pub, of all things, on Christmas Eve, and he is seen on the road, and it's a very famous story in the area. But he's actually seen on Christmas Eve on a stretch of road where he was last seen alive. And we have another wee one here again. It's from Christmas Eve, and this is from Derbyshire, and it's the Travellers' Rest public house. And the pub is said to be haunted by a local farm girl, and she actually died after she fell down the stairs, trying to escape from one of the drunken inhabitants of the pub, and she fell down the stairs and died, and she is seen on the staircase. And also a woman in black has been seen around the same pub, and she carries in her hand a set of old-fashioned keys. So again, that's very like the woman in black, the story. And then the last one, again, this haunting occurs on Christmas Eve, and this is actually Anne Boleyn in Kent, and it's a bridge over the Eden River, and Anne Boleyn's spirit crosses the bridge once a year, which is every 24th of December, and her ghost is seen, and so another very interesting story. But they are all hauntings that occur on Christmas Eve.
And don't you hear that one so much in various urban legends of the woman crossing a bridge? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's lots of legends with the bridges, isn't there? There's one up in, is it Donegal or something, with the Bridge of Tears or something? Mm-hmm. There's lots of different ones associated with bridges and things like that, so yeah.
And I think it's so sad as well, because many of the tales of children dying, so many of them have to do with like horse riding accidents. It's so sad. Yeah,
I've actually heard of a few stories like that where the children have been hit by carriages, and another one is stairs in these old houses, and I think a lot of the women and the girls fell, they were wearing the long skirts. There's a lot of hauntings to do with staircases in these older properties, because they would have tripped on their skirts and obviously fallen and broken their necks or had awful injuries and didn't survive. So.
Well, Anne, thank you so much for another very interesting haunted history, and I look forward to you coming back on next month for another one.
No problem, Rita. Thanks very much, and have a nice Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Bye.
Haunted History with Anne Burns of Down Paranormal, in association with HauntedSolutions.com.